A couple of days ago, Sledgehammer gave us another update regarding the status of World War II, some things that are being worked on, and other things alike. This, of course, is a part of their weekly update series that they're trying to continue on, and while we didn't have as much compared to the week before to talk about in the ways of updates and things the community should know about, there were still a lot of things that we were able to talk about, and we detailed all of that in the video on Friday. But a quick recap comes down to the fact that PC players were having some of their issues with winter bribes being fixed and remedied, and then being granted 3 resistance bribes in the near future to accommodate for that sort of lack thereof of what they got within the Winter Siege event. They talked a little bit about Domination XL being almost ready and being added as a featured playlist in World War II. They talked a little bit about supply drop issues in the UI, in which some things were not showing up properly. They talked about orders and contracts coming to zombies for the launch of DLC 2, but the final thing that they mentioned were score streaks, in which they mentioned that the paratroopers were buffed, and that's something that's brilliant, but they also mentioned they were working on more tweaks to score streaks that they were planning to roll out sometime soon. So while we don't have anything more than just that general idea of score streak buffs and nerfs will be coming soon, we do have the idea confirmed to us, and therefore I want to take a little bit of a more conversational approach to this video today and give you guys some thoughts, ideas, and maybe some general direction on where we can see these adjustments coming, when we can see them coming, and how it will affect World War II overall. So this one, fair warning, there's not really all that much news or massive information in it. It's just more so a conversational back and forth on some of my thoughts with score streaks, and hopefully drop yours as well on maybe some constructive criticism for score streak tuning and what we can hopefully see coming up in the near future. So let's just jump right into the thick of it, because when we think about Call of Duty, we think about some of the best golden era days of Call of Duty. One thing that really sticks out is score streaks. When you take a look at what a lot of people really loved in the classic Call of Duty games, World at War, Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, Black Ops, all those games had some great streaks, and that's one thing that may or may not stand out to you out of those games, but they were definitely a prominent piece whenever they were at their prime. So when you take a look at, say, Modern Warfare 2, that's my go-to in terms of streaks. The Chopper Gunner was insanely good. It was definitely well worth. The Harriers were well worth, and of course that game-ending nuke that everybody sought after, well, those streaks were once again iconic. As for others, the AC-130, once again, iconic. Dogs from World at War, iconic. There are so many different games within the Call of Duty franchise that have had some standout score streaks, but as of the past couple of years, maybe it's just me, but there really hasn't been all that many. Probably the last score streak combination that I felt like I genuinely dominated with was in Black Ops 3, in which it was a Cerberus, Hater, and then Raps, to which that did great and everything, but it still doesn't compare to the classics of the Harrier, Chopper Gunner, and Nuke, or some other combination like that. And so, with that said, this lack of appeal for score streaks kind of takes away, I think, from the gameplay experience overall from World War II, and that's where World War II can very much so benefit from score streak tunings, and that's where I'm hoping that these ones coming up can address these sort of balancing issues in terms of the performance versus the actual amount that it costs to get it, because right now it feels like the high-rated streaks just aren't the greatest rewards. Honestly, I run Recon, Glide Bomb, and Paratroopers because I feel like those are the ones that are rather actually worth it, especially with the Paratroopers being buffed recently. That's definitely a great one, or at least a topic of debate, I think, that makes it a more valuable asset to your class setup and loadout. In terms of the other ones, well, the Glide Bomb, it's relatively cheap and you're guaranteed to get at least 1 or 2 kills with it, and so therefore, to me, it's kind of worth it in that sense. Recon, of course, is just standard because it's a support streak, sure, but it also is cheap. So therefore, you're getting those assist rewards and you're also getting the opportunity to get more kills with your guns because you have the idea and heads up of where players are because of it, and it doesn't cost much, so therefore, to me, it's definitely worth. But as for the other ones, the higher score streaks, and some that you guys can probably go into a debate about, such things like the ball turret gunner, the carpet bombing, the fire bombing run, the artillery barrage, and mortar strikes, well, a lot of those could really be adjusted, I think, to make them better. And starting at the bottom of the list, well, let's just get right through the ones that I think could use a change. The first one being the counter recon plane, because personally, I'm not a huge fan of the fact that it's only a preventative measure, essentially. So in World War II, if you guys did not ever notice, if you don't play around with it too much, all it really does is if there's a UAV in the air, it destroys that UAV, and then if it's up while there's not a UAV in, it just prevents the enemy from calling in a recon plane. So that said, it's something that's more of a preventative measure, whereas previously counter recon usually scrambled the enemy radar, which was something that was a very nice benefit from that you could use to your advantage. This game though, however, it does not. And for slightly more than a recon plane, I don't know if I'd necessarily consider that worth it, though I guess it falls in the eye of the beholder at that point. Another Another streak that I think could definitely use some adjusting is the flamethrower, and I haven't touched it in forever because of this, just because of the price. If you take a look at it, it's a 700 score price tag, which to me is way too expensive for what it should be. In the sense that it ends up crippling your movement speed a little bit. It is something that doesn't have the greatest range. You pretty much have to be right on top of somebody, though it does offer almost an instant kill, that you still can get traded from it, so therefore not necessarily instantaneous in that regard. But the overall potential for a massive streak with this, or a massive boost to your kill numbers, is relatively low, and 700 score for this to me is just a little bit too high. So I guess whenever it comes down to it, maybe I'd say adjust the score a little bit or make the kill potential a little bit quicker, because for 700 score, you'd expect a little bit more out of that potentially. And one thing that I can even say for this is this used to be a meta score streak. If you guys watch competitive COD at all or anything like that, I forget the exact time frame off the top of my head, but it was something that it was used for a bit of time and then just tailed off because there were adjustments made to the flamethrower. Another adjustment I would make would be to the mortar strike per se, because unlike previous iterations of it in the lightning strike within Black Ops 2 and 3, but the mortar strike doesn't really have that great of a kill potential, and it seems like though it is the same exact formula, just doesn't work as well. So maybe bring this one down slightly in score, maybe increase the power a little bit, maybe increase the radius, something that comes down to giving a little bit more kill potential for it. And though it might not be one that is as common, I don't see this one as much in my games personally. It is one though that I would like to use, but just because it doesn't really have as much value to me in the sense of its potential, I don't use it all that much. As for the artillery barrage, this one's kind of iffy in my books, because sometimes I will get some multi-kills off of it. There are some games in which it just goes absolutely crazy, I place it perfectly, but then there's others where I get only hit markers, and that's sometimes at the best. So I really don't know for a change to this if I would just increase the lethality of the mortar rounds that are being thrown in there, or if it's something that maybe I would decrease cost a little bit. I am not entirely sure. This one is probably one of the ones I'm more so hung up on and stuck with, because it is something that sometimes does feel right, but other times it feels incredibly off. Now in terms of other different criticisms I'd have, I'd probably come down to just say maybe the carpet bombing run, and then also the ball turret gunner for the final two that I would adjust, because simply flak guns, that's I think relatively balanced in the sense that it cancels all score streaks for just under 1,000 score. Emergency airdrop is of course great because you get 3 different subsidiaries underneath that gives you the potential for whatever it may be. Fire bombing run, I guess if I were to make one single change, it would maybe be to increase the length in which that napalm spread is on the playing field, but that's something that's just once again personal preference. I don't know if that would actually make all that much of a difference, but the carpet bombing run, while it is a fantastic streak, I think in the sense that it's almost like that stealth bomber, the one thing that I would say is that it's a little bit too overpriced for the damage that it inflicts. A lot of the times I'll end up killing myself with it more so than getting multi-kills per pass. So while it is great to get 2-3 kills per pass per se, a lot of the times it doesn't do that, and therefore I think that that 1,400 price tag is a little bit too pricey for it. And the final thing is the ball turret gunner, because this is one that you commonly see with requisitions, and of course it can be very annoying, but for people that do not run requisitions on this, getting that score is something that is very nice to be able to actually achieve, but the yield is, well, of course, not the greatest in the sense that it just doesn't give you for what you'd expect for that price tag. It's not everything that's cracked up to be. So once again, maybe with that one, maybe just lower it a little bit, and I guess that comes down to a lot of the different roundouts for some of the criticisms I have, or just maybe the prices, which I guess you can argue if you really want to get good kit or something like that, which I'll firmly be able to counter with some gameplay if I actually attempt for them, but I don't know, that's my personal preference on these, I guess. But of course, feel free to leave yours down there in the comment section down below. A couple other things though that I want to mention before we wrap up this video is Domination XL, because that is of course going to change the meta entirely on how score streaks are obtained, and of course what people will be using. One thing that was fantastic about Domination previously was you had those capture points, those capture kills, those defend kills, and all those other things that were nice score streak bonuses by simply playing more so along the objective, not even necessarily just jumping on the flags themselves, because you could rack up a ton of kills just by being around the flag, and if somebody was pushing it, taking them off it, those sort of situations. Whenever we had Domination in the past, it was fantastic with 100 points per kill, and you'd be able to rack up score streaks on top of all of those other things that helped get you score. But in World War II, the regular Domination being 50 points per kill, and then those score bonuses in terms of, say, flag captures, defends, capture kills, all that kind of stuff. Those were nice, but when you add in 100 points per kill to bring it back up to speed, well, that's where we're gonna start to see a little bit of more score streaks flourishing, and that is something that I don't know if it might be best to hold off on score streak tunings if pricing is going to be adjusted in that sense, or if it's something that we just go all in and say, change some of these in terms of maybe the power, maybe the score, but also throw in Domination XL to give everybody exactly what they wanted. Go from maybe something that wasn't a score streak oriented game in the slightest, but then going to something that might be overkill on score streaks, seeing kind of the extremes on both ends. But that's something we have to keep in mind as well, that sort of balance between that, whether or not Sledgehammer wants to take the full risk on implementing both at the same point in time, or if it's going to be something that is incrementally rolled out to maybe we see some score streaks adjusted, Domination XL, then the other score streaks adjusted, or we see one or the other coming first or second. But the final thing I want to mention is potentially a release date for when we see these changes happen. My best guess has been already talked about a little bit here up on the channel in passing, but that is at the end of the Resistance event, at the end of this coming week, next Tuesday, because that's when we're going to be getting presumably another title update to revert everything back in World War II, back to that normal state that we have, similar to what launch was, of course, though with less bugs and everything. But that said, we won't have any sort of event or anything like that. It'll just be a regular state that, if we follow the same pattern of how Winter Siege ended up finishing, we got a title update there, and that put everything back to normal, but we ended up getting a title update addressing some different issues in terms of weapon balancing, some different gameplay bug issues, and all kinds of things like that, on top of just removing everything from the Winter Siege event. So I would assume that's the same scenario in what happens here for the Resistance event, and thus I would imagine that would probably be the best time to implement something that is a sort of game change like this. So while it is something that is no way, shape, or form confirmed, that's just my hunch, my educated guess on this, but it could be wrong, and if so, I'll be the first one to admit it. But that said, that's where we're gonna wrap it up. Don't want to keep you guys too long or anything like that, so let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section down below. How would you guys adjust score streaks in World War II? Would you guys adjust any of the damage to them? Would you guys adjust any of the, say, pricing? Whatever it may be, let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section down below. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, make sure you drop a like down below, and of course, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding World War II. If you guys are interested in anything regarding best class setups, tips, tricks, news, information, showcases, updates, all that good stuff, we got you covered here up on the channel. So if any of it interests you, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys want to follow me over on Twitter as well, that's the best place to get connected with me outside of YouTube. Practically live on Twitter, so if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, link is down there in the description below. And finally, if you guys want to follow me over on Instagram, I'm trying to get a little bit more active over there, so if you guys want to follow me there too, well, that link is also down there in the description. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, but thank you guys all so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. Mine is an espresso. Take care, and peace.